Dr. Rugo?
Perhaps I could finish. So one of the things that I think is important is that we need, as citizens, we need information on what is being reallocated to what and the rationale. I think without a clear rationale, because as he's saying, the regional development authorities have been performing a lot of functions we are devolved functions. So they've been playing a role between counties, and therefore, when you reallocate, for instance, from those, part of it is rationalizing. But when you think about, let's take, for example, and addiction has that significant shift. Think about agriculture sector, that also has a significant allocation. Does it mean, for instance, that the allocation that has been removed from agriculture sector, livestock, for instance, has actually been moved to increase their allocations to county governments, because they're the ones which are responsible for that kind of a function. That's information that you do not have, in terms of. But then when you think about where the allocations have gone,
because I'd like us to focus a little bit on the education sector, because that's big. 642 billion, 0.2 billion. Fine, as a bigger one, but it's also a 7% reduction. But like we said, we don't want to look at percentages because those can tell us. What are your thoughts around, the specific breakdown within the education sector based on what we've seen with the allocations, and what does that tell you about the priorities? Are you concerned about it?
Yeah, it's very concerned, and we have raised that question because we could not find within the budget documents where this school feeding program, for instance, because, for instance, when you look at the budget documents, this year, it's zero. It's been zeroed from 4.9 to 0. But next year, that is 2025, 2026, there is again another allocation, which then begs the question, which department is going to be handling this and at what cost? But secondly, I think it's also important to say that when you look at the other sectors of education that have had changes, the number of students, particularly at this particular point, there are a number of schools whose infrastructure has been swept by floods. The number of vulnerable children and families that will depend on the school feeding program will move from 2.3, which is actually expected to go higher. So given the externalities, that are happening even within the education sector, let's take about the JSS. You have an allocation which is an increment, for instance, to TSC to hire more teachers, but it's only hiring 55% of the number that is required. 45% are still going to remain as interns. What does that mean in the longevity? And the sustainability of the kind of capacity that we need. So for us, it's really a concern. And whether are we saying by not focusing on those aspects, we want more private sector investment? What does that mean for education as a public good and public service? For us, those are the concerns and the questions. And as I've said, really, we don't have details of what has moved where. Yet what we are seeing, and also, let me connect it to something else. At the same time, you also have reductions in social protection programs.
Yes.
A lot of these things are connected because it's the same children from these vulnerable families, who are benefiting not only from this school feeding program, some of whom are being taken by older members of their families, grandparents and the like, who depend on these cash transfers.
Right.
And therefore that almost, basically just, snowballs the situation.
Right.
So it's a big concern. And as I've said, really, the information on what is moving where, what is the rationale, which I think, as we've said, really, for purposes of the discussion this evening, it will be interesting to hear what is the rationale behind, some of these moves.